My name is Joan Smith, a native forest ranger, and if I'm being honest, I've never been particularly good at my job. My colleagues don't trust me much, and that's not just a feeling. It's a reality that weighs heavily on my shoulders. In a profession where teamwork is crucial, being the outcast can feel like a death sentence. You see, I've always been more comfortable alone, preferring the whispers of the wind and the rustling of leaves to the chatter of my fellow rangers. But I never imagined that a single assignment would change the trajectory of my life forever. It was a chilly autumn morning when my boss, a stern man named Jim, called me into his office. The air was thick with tension, and the way he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, signaled that this was not a casual chat. He fixed his piercing gaze on me, and I felt a familiar knot of anxiety form in my stomach. "Jones," he began, his voice low and steady, "I need you to head out to the Smoky Mountain National Park. We've had reports of unusual activity in the area, and I trust you to take care of it." "Unusual activity?" I asked, my brow furrowing. I had heard the stories. Local legends of ghostly apparitions and whispers that danced through the trees. But I never thought they were anything more than campfire tales meant to scare the inexperienced. "Just go and don't screw it up," Jim replied curtly, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. The unspoken message was clear. This was my chance to prove myself, and I couldn't afford to fail. As I drove towards the park, unease washed over me. I thought about the other rangers, how they exchanged wary glances whenever I entered the room. They had every right to doubt me. I had made mistakes in the past, but I was determined to redeem myself. This time, I promised myself I wouldn't let fear dictate my actions. Arriving at the entrance of the park, the landscape opened up before me, revealing a stunning panorama of rolling hills and dense forests. The vibrant hues of autumn painted the trees, but an unsettling feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I stepped out of my truck and inhaled the crisp air, hoping it would quell the growing anxiety. As I ventured deeper into the park, I could feel the weight of the silence surrounding me. It was almost as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves faded into an eerie quiet, replaced by the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. I shook off the feeling and focused on my duties, but a nagging sense of dread followed me like a shadow. Hours passed as I patrolled the trails, checking for any signs of disturbances. Everything seemed normal on the surface, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was an instinctive feeling, one I couldn't explain. Every rustle in the underbrush sent shivers down my spine, and I found myself glancing over my shoulder more times than I cared to admit. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the forest floor, I stumbled upon an old, weathered signpost that read, "Beware, do not enter." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. This wasn't on any of my maps. I peered into the darkening woods beyond the sign, and for a brief moment I thought I saw movement, just a flicker in the corner of my eye. But when I turned, there was nothing there. I shook my head, dismissing it as fatigue playing tricks on my mind. I was about to turn back when a distant sound broke the silence, a soft, mournful cry that echoed through the trees. It sent a jolt of fear through me, and my instincts screamed to leave. But curiosity pulled me closer, and against my better judgment, I followed the sound deeper into the woods. With each step, the air grew colder, and the shadows lengthened ominously. I felt a sense of foreboding as I pushed further into the forest. The mournful cries intensified, weaving a haunting melody that seemed to call my name. I knew I shouldn't be here, that I was crossing a line, but something compelled me to continue. And that's when everything changed. As I pushed through the thick underbrush, I stumbled upon a clearing illuminated by the fading light of the setting sun. At its center stood a massive, gnarled tree, its branches twisted like skeletal fingers reaching toward the sky. Beneath it lay remnants of what looked like an old campsite, abandoned tents, charred logs, and a small fire pit. Then I saw them. Figures, ethereal and glowing, their faces twisted in anguish. Their eyes locked onto mine, And in that moment, I knew I had crossed into a realm I didn't belong in. The cries grew louder, resonating through the clearing, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. Panic surged within me, and I turned to flee. But it was too late. The forest erupted into chaos, shadows swirling around me, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. I ran, branches clawing at my skin, but the echoes of their cries haunted me. I knew I'd stepped into something far beyond my comprehension, and there would be no turning back. The forest surrounding Smoky Mountain National Park was as much a character in this unfolding nightmare as I was. Towering trees formed a cathedral-like canopy above, filtering the dying light of day into ethereal beams that danced upon the forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a testament to the cycle of life and death that thrived within the wilderness. But beneath the serene facade lay a history of secrets and sorrow, whispered through the rustling leaves and carried by the wind. As a forest ranger, I had spent years patrolling these woods, but I had never truly understood their depths, both literal and metaphorical. Growing up in a small town on the outskirts of the Smokies, I had heard tales of the forest's haunted reputation, but I always dismissed them as folklore. My job had been a way to reconnect with the nature I loved, but now I felt it was a veil hiding something darker. It wasn't just the forest that was haunting. My own past loomed over me like a shadow. I remember my days as a young ranger, full of ambition and hope. I had dreamed of becoming a respected figure among my peers, earning their trust through hard work and dedication. Instead, I had stumbled my way through mishaps and blunders, losing their confidence along the way. Jim, my boss, had taken me under his wing, but even he had grown frustrated with my inability to perform. The other rangers, men and women who had dedicated their lives to preserving the beauty of this land, treated me with a mixture of pity and disdain. I was the one they whispered about when they thought I couldn't hear. I was the one who failed to complete safety checks, who got lost on simple trails, who made rookie mistakes that jeopardized our operations. In their eyes, I was the weak link. But as I wandered deeper into the woods that evening, I realized my struggles were far less significant than the untold stories of those who had perished here. The figures I had seen in the clearing were not mere figments of my imagination. They were the souls of those who had vanished, perhaps victims of the very same haunting that now gripped me. I thought of my old friend Nathan, who had gone missing during a hiking trip a few years back. We had set out together, two young men eager to conquer the trails, only for him to disappear without a trace. I had spent countless nights replaying the last moments we shared, his laughter, his enthusiasm, and the way he always seemed to know how to navigate even the trickiest paths. He had been the talented ranger, the one everyone admired, and I, his shadow, had watched him vanish, unable to save him. That regret settled heavily on my chest, merging with the fear pulsing through my veins. I had failed then, just as I feared I would fail now. What if these spirits were seeking vengeance for my incompetence? What if their cries were a warning, a premonition of what awaited me if I didn't turn back? Suddenly, a chill swept through the clearing, sending a shiver down my spine. The temperature dropped, and the once serene atmosphere morphed into something sinister. The cries intensified, transforming from sorrowful wails to anguished screams that echoed around me. I turned to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the ground, as if the very soil beneath me conspired to hold me in place. And then I saw her, a woman, ethereal and shimmering, standing beneath the gnarled tree. Her features were blurred, a ghostly visage of despair etched upon her face. She reached out toward me, her fingers elongated and trembling, as if she were desperately trying to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. "Help us," she pleaded, her voice a haunting whisper that seemed to swirl in the wind. "You must free us from this curse." Every instinct told me to run, to escape the torment of the unseen. But something in her eyes, an urgency mixed with a profound sadness, pulled me in. I felt an inexplicable connection, as if my failures had led me here for a reason. Maybe this was my chance at redemption, a chance to confront the ghosts of my past, both literal and metaphorical. "W, what do you want from me?" I stammered, the fear in my voice betraying the bravery I hoped to muster. "Uncover the truth," she urged, her voice echoing like a mournful wind. "The forest holds our stories, our pain. You must reveal what has been hidden." The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I had spent my life avoiding the truth, hiding behind my mistakes and failures. But this was different. The souls of the lost needed someone to break the silence, to share their story and ensure they would not be forgotten. As the shadows danced around me, I made a decision. I would not run from this. This was my chance to confront my fears, to reclaim my identity as a forest ranger. I would dig deeper into the mysteries of the Smoky Mountains, not only for the sake of the lost souls, but for my own redemption. The forest whispered secrets, and it was time for me to listen. The decision to delve deeper into the mysteries of Smoky Mountain National Park was both liberating and terrifying. I felt a spark of determination igniting within me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the weight of uncertainty. I knew that the specters of the forest had their reasons for choosing me, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt that I would fail once more. However, as a ranger, I was sworn to protect this land, and now it seemed my mission extended far beyond the physical boundaries of the park. The following day, I returned to the ranger station, determined to uncover the truth behind the disappearances and the supernatural occurrences that had haunted these woods. My colleagues, still skeptical of my abilities, regarded me with a mix of curiosity and contempt as I began to dig through old records, searching for any hint of the tragedies that lay buried in the history of the Smokies. My investigation led me to discover a series of disappearances that spanned decades. Young hikers who had ventured too far, families who had come for a picnic and never returned, and lone wanderers whose laughter echoed through the trees one moment and vanished the next. Each case had its own tragic narrative, but the common thread that bound them all was a chilling sense of foreboding that clung to the pages of the files like mist in the early morning. The more I read, the more I began to sense an unsettling pattern. Many of the victims had gone missing in the same areas where I had felt the strongest presence of the supernatural. It was as if the forest was not only a physical entity, but a sentient being with its own hunger for the souls of the lost. I could feel their pain seeping through the words on the pages, and I knew I was becoming entangled in something far greater than myself. Jim, my boss, was skeptical of my newfound obsession. "Jones, you need to focus on your duties," he cautioned, his voice laced with concern. "You can't let these stories consume you. It's just folklore." But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of something monumental. What if it's not just folklore? I pressed. What if these spirits are trying to communicate with us? What if there's a reason they're reaching out? Jim's brow furrowed. "You're treading dangerous ground, Jones. You need to remember that our job is to protect the park, not get lost in its legends." But the legends were no longer just stories to me. They had become a call to action. I had to confront the history of this place, no matter how daunting the task seemed. I began to interview locals, old-timers who had spent their lives in the shadow of the Smokies, listening to their tales of encounters with the supernatural. Each story painted a more vivid picture of the park's dark underbelly, a world where the line between the living and the dead was often blurred. One particular story caught my attention, a tale of a woman named Clara who had gone missing decades ago while hiking with her husband. They had been an adventurous couple, drawn to the thrill of the wild, but one fateful day, Clara simply vanished. Her husband had searched tirelessly, calling her name into the woods until his voice was raw, but the forest had swallowed her whole. Locals whispered that her spirit roamed the trails, searching for her husband, desperate to return to the life she once knew. The story resonated with me deeply, intertwining with my own feelings of inadequacy and the haunting memories of Nathan. I felt a growing compulsion to uncover what had happened to Clara, to give her a voice when she had been silenced for so long. As I continued my research, a series of strange occurrences began to unfold around me. During my nightly patrols, I'd catch glimpses of shadowy figures flitting between the trees. Hear whispers carried on the wind that seemed to call my name. I became acutely aware of the feeling of being watched, as if the forest itself had grown increasingly aware of my presence. One evening, as I ventured deeper into the woods, the familiar landscape morphed into something unrecognizable. The trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches clawing at the sky, and an eerie fog began to creep along the ground. It felt as if the forest were shifting, rearranging itself to ensnare me further in its grasp. And then it happened. I stumbled upon an old, forgotten trail, overgrown and crumbling, almost as if the forest was trying to conceal it. The air felt thick with anticipation, and a voice, soft yet urgent, echoed in my mind, urging me to follow. I hesitated, my heart racing in my chest. Part of me wanted to turn back, to flee from whatever dark truths lay ahead. But the other part, this burgeoning resolve, demanded I press on. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the path, feeling an inexplicable pull guiding me. With every step, I could sense the weight of the forest around me, alive with stories begging to be told. As I walked, I felt a chilling breeze caress my skin, and I instinctively knew I was not alone. The forest was watching, waiting for me to uncover the secrets it had hidden for so long. The deeper I ventured, the more the tension built. Shadows darted just beyond the reach of my flashlight. Whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a tempest. And then, just as I began to feel the first flickers of panic, I stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a weathered stone altar, covered in moss and surrounded by skeletal trees that leaned inward, as if protecting something sacred. I approached cautiously, drawn by an invisible force. But the moment I reached out to touch the stones, a deafening wail erupted from the trees, echoing through the forest. The spirits of the lost were angry, and I was standing on the precipice of a confrontation I could never have imagined. The energy in the air crackled, and I realized that I was no longer just a ranger. I was a vessel for their pain, their anger, and their desire for vengeance. The conflict was no longer an abstract concept. It had become a visceral reality, and I had to find a way to navigate it before I, too, became a victim of the forest's wrath. As I stood in that clearing, the echoes of lost souls resonated around me, and I realized the confrontation was not just with the supernatural forces of Smoky Mountain National Park, but also with my own unresolved past. The pain of Nathan's disappearance, the fear of failure, and the weight of the ranger's badge I wore all converged in that moment. The forest, alive with its haunting energy, seemed to demand accountability, not just from me, but from the very fabric of my being. The stories of Clara and others like her weren't just cautionary tales. They were threads woven into the tapestry of the Smokies, binding their fates to mine. I began to see Clara's disappearance as a metaphor for my own life, lost in the woods, searching for purpose and struggling to be seen. The complexity of my emotions intertwined with the tragedy of the forest, creating a profound sense of urgency. Determined to uncover the truth behind the altar and the spirit's anguish, I decided to delve into the history of the park even further. In the days that followed, I immersed myself in archives, old newspaper clippings, and local folklore, piecing together the narrative of Clara and others who had vanished. Each revelation brought me closer to the chilling reality that many had met tragic ends in pursuit of their dreams, only to be forgotten by time. During this time, I began to form connections with the local community, including a group of amateur historians who had dedicated their lives to preserving the stories of those lost in the Smokies. They became a crucial part of my investigation, sharing their insights and helping me uncover the layered complexities of the park's history. One of them, an elderly man named Harold, had been a close friend of Clara's husband. His eyes mirrored the pain of those who had lost loved ones to the woods, and he offered me invaluable guidance. "There's a reason the forest takes," he said one evening as we sat on the porch of his old cabin, sipping sweet tea. "It craves what it lost: love, companionship, hope. It's as if the trees hold on to memories, and they won't let go until they've been avenged." His words resonated within me, deepening my understanding of the conflict that lay ahead. It became clear that Clara's story was emblematic of many others, a cycle of loss that fed into the forest's dark legacy. As I pieced together the stories of the lost, I realized I was not merely a passive observer. I was becoming part of a narrative that had been unfolding long before I set foot in the park. As I continued my investigation, I discovered the darker aspects of the Smokies. Stories of poachers, illegal logging, and the struggle between conservation and exploitation. These subplots revealed a grim reality where greed and human folly collided with nature's fury. I learned of families torn apart by the forest's ruthless cycles, of lives shattered by the loss of loved ones, and I understood that these stories of betrayal and grief were as integral to the park's identity as its towering trees. With each layer I uncovered, I could feel the pressure mounting. The woods were not just haunted by spirits, but also by the sins of the past. The weight of these revelations bore down on me, amplifying my sense of purpose. The park needed a voice to articulate its suffering, a guardian to protect its sacred history, and ensure the lost would not be forgotten. But my quest for truth was not without its challenges. My colleagues at the ranger station grew increasingly wary of my obsessive focus on the supernatural and the history of the park. They feared I was losing touch with reality, and their skepticism began to take a toll on my morale. It felt as if the shadows of doubt were closing in, making it harder to navigate my mission. One afternoon, while I was poring over maps in the station, I overheard Jim and another ranger discussing my recent behavior. "He's losing it," Jim said, his voice tinged with frustration. "We can't have him chasing ghosts while there are real dangers in the park." Their words cut deep, fueling my insecurity and making me question whether I was truly cut out for this line of work. But just as doubt began to creep in, I recalled the faces of the lost, Clara, Nathan, and countless others who had been silenced. I couldn't let their stories fade into obscurity. Fueled by determination, I organized a community meeting to share my findings and invite others to join the cause. I wanted to rally support, to create a network of individuals who could help honor the memories of those who had vanished in the woods. To my surprise, the meeting was met with enthusiasm. Locals, hikers, and fellow rangers gathered, each sharing their own stories and experiences. Together, we formed a coalition committed to preserving the history of the Smoky Mountains and advocating for those who could no longer speak for themselves. As I stood before the group, I felt a surge of hope. I was no longer alone in this endeavor. We discussed plans for a memorial for the lost, a way to acknowledge their existence and ensure their stories lived on. But even as the community rallied around this idea, I could feel the supernatural forces still lurking in the shadows, reminding me that my journey was far from over. As the days turned into weeks, I balanced my ranger duties with my newfound mission. But the forest continued to exert its influence, pulling me deeper into its mysteries. Late-night patrols became increasingly harrowing, with the whispers of the lost becoming more pronounced. I sensed Clara's presence in particular, her spirit guiding me as I walked the trails. But with this guidance came an unsettling realization. I was becoming more attuned to the darkness that enveloped the park. The connection I felt to the spirits grew stronger, but so did the sense of danger. The woods were shifting, as if testing my resolve. I found myself grappling with the complexities of the park, how the natural world intertwined with human emotion, how love and loss became intricately woven into the fabric of the forest. The stories I unearthed painted a vivid picture of the Smokies as a place of beauty and brutality, a sanctuary and a prison. In the end, the conflicts I faced were not just external battles against the supernatural, but also internal struggles to find my place within this narrative. As I prepared for the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead, I knew that I had to embrace the complexities of the park and confront the darkness, not only for the spirits, but for myself as well. The days blurred into nights as I continued my investigations, each trail leading me deeper into the heart of the Smoky Mountains and into the depths of my own fears. The nights grew longer, the shadows darker, and the whispers of the lost became an almost constant presence. Just when I thought I had reached a breaking point, a moment came that would irrevocably change my understanding of the park and of myself. It was a stormy night, when the turning point arrived. The rain lashed against the ranger station, the wind howled through the trees, and the atmosphere crackled with a tense energy. I had been poring over old journals and maps, searching for any connection that might lead me to the truth about Clara and the other lost souls. The air felt thick with anticipation, as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. I received a call on my radio, an emergency report from a group of hikers who had become disoriented in the storm. They had lost their way and were in a section of the park known for its treacherous terrain. Despite the raging storm, I knew I had to respond. I couldn't let them face the wilderness alone, especially given the dark forces I believed lurked within. With my heart pounding, I grabbed my gear and set off into the tempest. Each step through the rain-soaked underbrush felt heavy, as if the very ground resisted my movement. The storm intensified, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. I fought against the elements, my determination bolstered by the knowledge that lives were at stake. As I navigated the slippery trails, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Shadows darted just beyond my field of vision, and the forest seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The sounds of the storm were punctuated by distant whispers, echoing the names of those who had gone missing in these very woods. Clara, Nathan, the list felt endless. I reached the location where the hikers were last reported to be. The storm raged around me, and the wind howled through the trees, creating a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts. "Hello," I shouted into the darkness, my voice swallowed by the storm. "Is anyone out there?" Suddenly, a faint cry reached my ears. "Help! We're over here!" A flicker of hope ignited within me, and I followed the sound, my heart racing. I pushed through the dense foliage, feeling the oppressive weight of the forest close in around me. As I emerged into a small clearing, I saw them, 3 terrified hikers huddled together beneath a fallen tree. Their faces were pale and drawn, eyes wide with fear. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The moment I stepped into the clearing, an eerie silence fell. The storm continued to rage, but it felt as if the forest had stopped, holding its breath. "Thank God you found us," one of the hikers gasped, his voice trembling. "We thought we were done for." But as I approached them, the air shifted. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I could sense an oppressive energy surrounding us. It was as if the very trees were alive, watching, judging. I turned to reassure the hikers, but before I could speak, a low rumble echoed through the clearing, causing the ground beneath us to tremble. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the forest, and in that brief moment, I saw her, Clara, standing among the trees, her expression filled with sorrow and desperation. My heart stopped. Was it a trick of the storm, or had I truly seen her? I blinked, and she was gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. "Jones, what's happening?" another hiker shouted, panic rising in his voice. "Stay calm," I replied, though my own heart was racing. I felt the pull of the forest, a deep, unsettling connection to Clara and the countless souls lost within its depths. The realization hit me like a thunderclap. I was not merely a ranger in these woods. I was part of a larger narrative, a guardian intertwined with the lives of the lost. Just then, the wind shifted, carrying with it a whisper that sent chills down my spine. "Help us find us." It was Clara's voice, faint yet haunting, reverberating through the trees. I felt a surge of emotion, a mix of fear and resolve. "Clara," I shouted, my voice cutting through the storm. "I'm here. I will help you." The hikers looked at me, confusion and fear etched on their faces. They couldn't hear her, couldn't see what I saw. "We need to get out of here," one of them urged, panic setting in. "No, we can't leave her," I insisted, desperation creeping into my voice. The storm's fury intensified, as if the forest itself was protesting my decision. With a final burst of energy, I stepped deeper into the clearing, calling out to Clara, to the spirits of the lost. "I won't abandon you. I'll find you." The words tumbled from my lips, fueled by a desperate need for redemption. The ground shook again, and a bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, sending it crashing down. The hikers screamed, and chaos erupted as they scrambled to escape the clearing. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by a vision of Clara, her face twisted in anguish, and the realization of what I needed to do. In that moment, everything became clear. The park wasn't just a collection of trails and trees. It was a living entity, infused with the emotions and stories of those who had come before me. I understood now that I needed to confront not just the forest, but the darkness within myself, my inadequacies, my fears of being untrusted by my peers. These were the chains that bound me. With newfound resolve, I closed my eyes and focused on Clara's spirit, channeling my energy into a promise. "I will bring you peace," I whispered. And as I opened my eyes, the storm seemed to still, the world around me transforming. I turned to the hikers, their faces still pale, but now filled with curiosity rather than fear. "We're going to find Clara," I declared, feeling the weight of my purpose. "Together, we will uncover the truth." The turning point had arrived. No longer would I be just a ranger struggling to prove myself. I would be a beacon for the lost, a voice for the voiceless. The path ahead would not be easy, but I knew it was the only way forward. The storm had finally abated, leaving behind a heavy silence in its wake. The air was thick with moisture, and the scent of damp earth enveloped us as I turned to face the hikers. Their eyes were wide with uncertainty, but a spark of hope flickered within them, ignited by my declaration. "Are you sure about this?" one of the hikers, a woman with dark hair and worried eyes, asked. "We just want to go for a hike. Now we're getting caught up in whatever this is." Her voice trembled, yet there was a glimmer of curiosity mingling with her fear. I could feel the weight of their gazes upon me, an intense pressure to prove my worth and lead them towards safety and resolution. "I understand your concerns," I replied, my voice steady despite the churning emotions within me. "But Clara's spirit is out there, and I can't ignore her call. We need to help her find peace. And in doing so, we might just save ourselves." Reluctance filled the clearing, but a shared sense of urgency rippled through the group. The forest, shrouded in its lingering fog, felt both alive and menacing, as if it were a witness to our decisions. They nodded, albeit hesitantly, and we formed a tight-knit circle, bound by the collective desire to confront whatever lay ahead. With each step deeper into the woods, I could sense the tension shifting. The forest that once felt like an adversary now embraced us as reluctant allies. It whispered through the leaves, echoing Clara's name, guiding us toward the unknown. But the deeper we ventured, the more I could feel the weight of the spirits that lingered within the trees, watching, waiting. As we navigated the familiar trails, I felt a peculiar energy pulsing beneath my feet, an undercurrent of history and sorrow. Memories of Clara and the others intertwined with the forest, and I began to grasp the magnitude of my role, not just as a ranger, but as a conduit between the living and the lost. "Do you really think we can find her?" one of the men asked, his brow furrowed with skepticism. "What if this is all just in your head?" I stopped, taking a breath to center myself. "I thought that too," I admitted, my voice softer now. "But I've seen things, felt things that I can't explain. Clara is out there, and we owe it to her to at least try." The group exchanged glances, and I could sense the shift in their perceptions. My vulnerability and conviction seemed to bridge the gap between us. They were no longer just hikers lost in the storm. We were now united by a shared purpose, however intangible it might have felt. As we pressed on, the forest became denser, the trees towering above us like silent sentinels. I led the way, guided by an instinct that I couldn't quite articulate. The whispers grew louder, and with each step, Clara's presence felt more palpable. I could almost see her, a flicker of light between the trees, beckoning me forward. But the deeper we went, the more the atmosphere shifted. The whispers took on a sharper tone, becoming more insistent. "Help us find us. The voices of the lost echoed in the back of my mind, blurring the line between reality and the supernatural. I shivered, glancing back at the hikers, who were visibly shaken by the shift. "Are you okay, Jones?" one of them asked, concern etched on her face. "You look different." "I'm fine," I replied, though I could feel the tremors of fear coiling in my gut. "We just need to keep moving. We're close." But as I said the words, a sinking feeling settled in my chest. What if we weren't close? What if we were walking into a trap set by the very spirits I was trying to save? Suddenly, the ground beneath us shifted, and the atmosphere turned electric. I glanced up to see a figure standing at the edge of the clearing. Clara, or at least a manifestation of her spirit. She looked ethereal, her hair billowing in an unseen breeze, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Help me," she implored, her voice a haunting melody. "You must help me." The hikers gasped, stepping back, uncertainty etched on their faces. "What is happening?" the woman asked, her voice trembling. "Is this real?" "It is," I insisted, heart racing. "Clara needs our help, but we must be careful. We can't lose focus." I stepped forward, drawn to her spirit, a tether pulling me closer. "Don't!" one of the men shouted, panic lacing his voice. "We don't know what that is," but I could see Clara's anguish, the weight of her sorrow, and I couldn't turn away. "I'm coming," I called out, my voice steady. "I'm here to help you." As I approached Clara, I felt the air thickening, charged with an energy that felt both invigorating and terrifying. Her eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I knew we were connected, our fates intertwined. The others hesitated, caught between fear and the inexplicable bond forming between me and Clara. "Please," Clara whispered, "find the truth, break the curse." Suddenly, the ground trembled, and the trees seemed to close in around us. The hikers looked to me, their trust wavering, but I stood firm, determined to confront the darkness that threatened to consume us all. "We're in this together," I said, rallying their courage. "We can face whatever this is." For Clara, the energy surged, pushing against us, but I felt a resolute strength rising within me. Clara's voice echoed in my mind, blending with the whispers of the forest. I knew I had to find the truth, not just for her, but for all the lost souls whose stories had been forgotten. And in that moment, I felt a shift, a connection to the spirits that lingered within the trees, guiding me forward. The air crackled with intensity, and I understood that this was not merely a rescue mission. It was a confrontation with the very essence of the forest and the darkness that had held it captive for so long. As the winds howled around us, I turned to the hikers. "Are you with me?" I asked, feeling the weight of their doubts. "We're going to find Clara. We're going to uncover the truth." With a collective nod, we forged ahead, ready to face whatever awaited us in the shadows, united by purpose and determination. As we pressed deeper into the heart of the forest, I could feel the weight of the spirits surrounding us, their whispers echoing like a haunting lullaby. Each step we took felt like a pilgrimage into the unknown, each breath thick with tension and the urgency of our mission. Clara's presence pulsed in the air, guiding us but also filling me with trepidation. What truths were we about to uncover? With each passing moment, my resolve grew stronger. The fear that had gripped me since the storm was being replaced by a fierce determination. I wasn't just a ranger lost in the woods anymore. I was a part of something much larger, an unfolding mystery that intertwined our fates. The hikers, once strangers, now felt like allies in a battle against the unknown. Their fears mirrored mine. Yet as we navigated through the oppressive silence, I could see their courage beginning to shine through. "Do you really think we can help her?" One of the hikers, a young man with glasses, asked as he stumbled over a root. He glanced up at me, uncertainty lacing his features. I paused, allowing the energy around us to settle for a moment. "I believe we can," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "But we need to trust each other. We need to be open to whatever comes next." Nodding, he straightened up, brushing off his pants. "Okay, I'm with you. I'll follow your lead." As we continued on, Clara's figure flickered in and out of view, her essence shimmering in the shadows. Each time I caught a glimpse of her, I felt a rush of emotions, sadness, anger, and an overwhelming sense of longing. It struck me that Clara was not just a ghost. She was a reflection of my own struggles, the insecurities that had haunted me since my early days as a ranger. I had always felt like an outsider, never quite measuring up to the expectations of my colleagues. The moments of doubt whispered in my mind, threatening to pull me back into the darkness. But as I stood there, surrounded by the palpable energy of the forest and the hikers who looked to me for guidance, I realized that I had a choice. I could either succumb to my fears or rise above them. "Stay close," I instructed, picking up the pace. "We're getting closer." The hikers moved in sync, their breaths quickening with every stride. Clara's spirit beckoned us forward, and I felt her pain merge with my own. I recalled the moments of failure I had faced over the years, the times I had let my team down, the missed opportunities. But now, I was no longer that man. I was evolving, fueled by the urgency to help Clara and, in turn, to save myself. The atmosphere shifted suddenly, growing colder as we neared a clearing. The trees thinned, revealing an eerie silence that enveloped us. It felt as if we had crossed a threshold into another realm, one steeped in unresolved tensions and lingering resentment. "Jones," the woman from earlier whispered, her voice barely audible. "Do you feel that?" I nodded, instinctively clutching the pendant around my neck, a gift from my mother meant to protect me in times of despair. "It's powerful," I murmured. "We need to be careful." As we stepped into the clearing, the ground felt alive beneath our feet, pulsing with an energy that resonated deep within my core. At the center stood an ancient tree, its gnarled branches reaching for the sky like twisted fingers. I could see Clara's spirit hovering near it, her ethereal form shimmering with intensity. "Help me," she called out, her voice echoing in the stillness. "You have to break the curse." My heart raced as I approached the tree, feeling an inexplicable pull. I glanced back at the hikers, who seemed frozen in a mix of awe and fear. "This is it," I said, a sense of purpose igniting within me. "We need to confront whatever has bound Clara to this place." "Are you sure?" the young man asked, fear flickering in his eyes. "What if it's dangerous?" I took a deep breath, recalling the countless times I had hesitated in the past, afraid to step into the unknown. "I can't turn back now," I said firmly. "For Clara, and for all of us, we have to try." Gathering our courage, we joined hands in a circle around the ancient tree. I could feel the energy surging through us, connecting our intentions and fusing our fears into a single, collective resolve. Clara's spirit hovered above us, her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "Listen to the voices of the past," Clara urged, her ethereal form flickering. "They hold the key to my release." As we closed our eyes, I focused on the whispers of the forest, the stories of the lost souls entwined with the roots of the ancient tree. Images flooded my mind. Clara laughing under the sun, the vibrant colors of the forest, and the sorrow etched into the faces of those who had wandered too far into its depths. Each memory was a piece of the puzzle that had kept Clara trapped. With each whisper, I felt my own fears beginning to dissipate. I was no longer just a guard. I was a protector, a bridge between the living and the lost. The weight of my past failures began to lift, replaced by a newfound strength and clarity. Together, I urged the hikers, my voice ringing with conviction. "We can do this. Let's break the chains that bind her." As we focused our energy, a surge of light erupted from the tree, illuminating the clearing with an intensity that momentarily blinded us. I felt Clara's presence intensifying, her spirit intertwining with ours as we called upon the memories of those lost. "Let go of your anger, your pain," I shouted, channeling every ounce of my being into the moment. "Embrace the love that remains. The light pulsed around us, and I could sense the spirits awakening, their voices rising in harmony with our own. I opened my eyes, finding Clara standing before us, her expression a mix of gratitude and hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a gentle breeze. "You freed me." The light enveloped her, and I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. In that moment, I understood the true power of our connection. I had faced my fears, accepted my past, and transformed it into strength, not just for myself, but for Clara and the others who had lingered in the shadows for far too long. As the light began to fade, Clara's spirit shimmered brightly, her pain dissipating like morning mist. The weight of the forest shifted, its whispers transforming into a soothing melody. We had forged a bond that transcended the boundaries of life and death, and I emerged from the experience renewed, ready to embrace whatever came next. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting elongated shadows that danced eerily across the forest floor. As we gathered our strength and wits, the atmosphere felt electric, charged with the energy of what we had just experienced. Clara's spirit shimmered with newfound clarity, and I could feel her presence reinforcing the bond we had forged. But beneath that sense of accomplishment lay a palpable tension. We had not yet faced the true source of her torment. "Jones, what now?" Clara asked, her voice laced with both urgency and hope. The air around us was thick with anticipation, as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting for our next move. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the moment. "We need to confront the curse that binds you," I said, my voice steady despite the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. "But first, we need to understand what we're up against. The more we know, the better prepared we'll be." The hikers gathered closer, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. The gravity of the situation was settling in, and I could see the realization dawning on them. This was not just a hike gone wrong. It was a battle against something darker than we could fully comprehend. "Are there any legends or stories about the curse?" I turned to Clara, hoping she could provide us with the insights we needed. "Yes," she said, her form flickering slightly. "There are tales of a malevolent spirit that haunts this forest, a guardian turned vengeful. Many believe it to be the reason for the disappearances and tragedies that have befallen those who enter these woods. It feeds on fear and despair, binding those who stumble into its realm." "Great, just what we needed," muttered the young man with glasses, his face pale. "How do we fight something like that?" "It's not just about fighting," I replied, trying to keep the panic from my voice. "It's about understanding its motivations. If we can confront its anger and pain, we might have a chance to break its hold over Clara and the others." "Then what's the plan?" Clara asked, her eyes shimmering with urgency. "We need to gather whatever remnants of Clara's past we can find," I explained. "The more we understand her connection to this place, the better equipped we'll be to face the spirit that's been holding her captive. I need each of you to help me recall anything that could be relevant. Memories, objects, anything." The hikers nodded, rallying together as I began to lead them through the clearing. The ancient tree loomed above us, its gnarled roots twisting in the soil like a maze, beckoning us to explore its depths. As we moved around it, I noticed markings etched into the bark, symbols I recognized from the folklore surrounding this area. They told stories of loss, pain, and ultimately, the chance for redemption. "Look at this," I said, tracing my fingers over one particular carving, a representation of a figure bound by chains. "This might be a depiction of Clara's curse. It shows the duality of the guardian, protective yet punishing." "What does that mean for us?" One of the hikers, a woman with auburn hair, asked, her brow furrowing. "It means we have to acknowledge the pain that has led to this curse," I replied. "If we confront it, perhaps we can weaken its hold on Clara. We need to gather our stories, our fears, and channel them into understanding. Only then can we break the cycle." We settled around the ancient tree, each of us taking turns sharing our fears and experiences related to the forest. I started, recounting my early days as a ranger, my feelings of inadequacy, the pressure to perform, and how those insecurities had haunted me. I've always felt out of place, like I was never meant to be here. I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But it wasn't until I faced the darkness that I began to understand my true strength. It's okay to feel fear. What matters is how we respond to it. As I spoke, I felt Clara's spirit growing stronger, weaving between us, absorbing our words. The hikers opened up, sharing their stories of loss, regret, and the burdens they carried. Each revelation felt like a thread woven into a tapestry of collective resilience, forming a shield against the darkness that awaited us. I lost my brother in these woods, the young man confessed, his voice trembling. He went missing on a hike years ago, and we never found him. I've carried that guilt with me ever since. Maybe he's here with us now, Clara said softly, her voice resonating with empathy. His spirit could be tied to this place, just like mine. The realization hit me hard. We weren't just fighting for Clara. We were fighting for every soul lost in the forest, those who had suffered and lingered in silence. I could feel the weight of their stories gathering in the air around us, forming a palpable energy that filled the clearing. We need to honor those spirits, I urged, my voice growing stronger. We have to remember them and embrace the love they left behind. It's time to break the chains of fear and pain that bind us. As we shared our stories, the atmosphere shifted, becoming charged with purpose. The forest seemed to respond, the wind picking up as if echoing our resolve. I could sense the energy building, preparing us for the confrontation that awaited. Are we ready? I asked, looking into each hiker's eyes. Their faces were resolute, reflecting the courage that had been forged in the fires of vulnerability. Yes, they replied in unison, their voices steady and strong, with Clara's spirit leading the way. We approached the heart of the forest, the darkness gathering like a storm cloud overhead. The air crackled with tension, and I could feel the weight of the malevolent spirit looming in the shadows. Remember, we're not alone, I reminded them as we stepped into the unknown. We carry the strength of every story shared, every spirit honored. We will face this darkness together. As we plunged into the depths of the forest, I could feel my heartbeat matching the rhythm of the land. The confrontation was near, and I steeled myself for the challenge ahead. With Clara beside us and the weight of our collective stories anchoring us, we would rise to meet whatever lay in the shadows. The atmosphere thickened as we moved deeper into the forest, the shadows elongating and twisting around us like tendrils reaching for the light. I could feel Clara's presence beside me, a warm glow that seemed to push back against the encroaching darkness. The energy we had built with our shared stories pulsed in the air, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. Stay close, I whispered to the group, my heart racing as we approached the clearing that I sensed was the heart of the malevolent spirit's domain. The air grew colder, and an unnatural silence enveloped us, the forest holding its breath, waiting for the impending confrontation. As we stepped into the clearing, a chilling wind swept through, making the leaves rustle ominously. The ground was eerily bare, the earth scarred by what felt like centuries of sorrow and anger. At the center stood an ancient tree, its gnarled branches reaching toward the sky, resembling twisted hands pleading for release. The bark shimmered faintly as if alive, and I knew we had found the epicenter of the curse. Can you feel it? Clara's voice was soft, but I could sense the tremor of fear underlying her words. This is where my spirit is trapped. Yes, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. This is where we must confront the spirit. Remember what we've shared. We carry the strength of our stories. Let that guide us. The atmosphere shifted suddenly, a heavy presence coalescing before us. A shadow emerged from the depths of the tree, taking the form of a tall figure, dark and indistinct. Its eyes glowed like embers, filled with an ancient rage that sent shivers down my spine. Why have you come to my domain? It boomed, its voice echoing through the clearing like thunder. You dare to challenge my power? I stepped forward, drawing strength from the huddled hikers behind me. We come to free Clara and honor those lost in these woods. Your rage has bound them for too long. The spirit hissed, the air around it crackling with malevolence. You think your pitiful stories can break my hold? You are fools. They belong to me, consumed by their own despair. Enough! I shouted, anger flaring within me. You feed on their pain, but we stand united. Their love, their memories. They are stronger than your darkness. The spirit recoiled slightly, its form wavering as if unsure of how to respond. I pressed on, channeling the energy we had built. We remember those lost to you. Their stories will not die in silence. Clara's pain is not hers alone. It is shared among us all. The spirit let out a guttural roar, its form shifting wildly as if caught in a storm. You dare speak of love? I am the guardian of these woods. I protect it from the weak. Protection doesn't come from fear. Clara's voice rang out, her spirit shimmering brighter beside me. It comes from understanding and compassion. You've twisted your role into something monstrous. We are here to reclaim what you've stolen. As Clara's words echoed through the clearing, the spirit faltered, its rage momentarily stalling. You think you can change me? I was wronged, and I will not be forgotten. We are not here to forget you, I said, my voice unwavering. We acknowledge your pain. We will not turn away from it, and we will not let you take Clara or anyone else again. The air shimmered around us as the shadows pressed closer, the spirit thrashing in response. You cannot win, it screeched, the forest trembling with its fury. Watch us, I shouted, turning to the group. Together, we will break the chains that bind you. Clara, share your story with us. As she began to speak, her voice filled with emotion, the atmosphere shifted. I am lost, yes, but I am also loved. My brother, my family, they never forgot me. They carried my memory into the light. I am not just a victim. I am a part of their lives. And I will not allow your darkness to consume me. With each word, Clara's spirit glowed brighter, radiating warmth that pushed back the shadows. The hikers rallied behind her, sharing their memories and stories, creating a chorus of love and remembrance that resonated throughout the clearing. The spirit writhed, its form flickering under the weight of our collective resolve. No, you will not take my power. Your power comes from fear, but we stand in love. I shouted, my heart racing. Feel the strength of our stories. The forest shuddered as our combined energy surged, and the shadows began to dissipate, the spirit's form weakening. The ancient tree trembled, its bark shimmering with newfound light, as if awakening from a long slumber. Enough! The spirit cried, its voice laced with desperation. I am bound by the past. You cannot free me. Then let go. Clara's voice pierced the air, powerful and unwavering. Release your anger, and you may find peace. As if struck by lightning, the spirit hesitated, its form flickering dangerously. The energy from the hikers surged, and in that moment, I felt the weight of every story, every lost soul, pouring into a singular force. With one final roar, the spirit began to dissolve, the shadows retreating into the earth. Clara's spirit shimmered brightly, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude as the malevolent force crumbled into nothingness. I am free, she whispered, her voice echoing through the clearing. As the last remnants of darkness faded, a sense of peace washed over us. The ancient tree stood tall and vibrant, the air lighter than it had been in years. I turned to the hikers, their faces illuminated with relief and triumph. We did it, together. The sun began to set over the forest, casting a warm golden glow across the clearing where the ancient tree stood. The oppressive atmosphere that had lingered for so long had lifted, replaced by a serene calm that felt almost sacred. Clara's spirit, now free, floated gently before us, her smile radiant and filled with gratitude. Thank you, she said, her voice echoing softly, as if carried by the wind. You've given me back my life, not just for me, but for all those who suffered in silence. I will carry your stories with me always, As she spoke, I felt a profound sense of closure wash over me. The burdens of fear and uncertainty that had haunted me during my years as a ranger melted away, replaced by a warmth I hadn't realized I was missing. I had always believed that I was the protector of the forest, but today I learned that true guardianship meant listening to the voices of the past and honoring them, not just with silence, but with stories. The hikers, too, felt the impact of our journey. Their faces reflected a mix of disbelief and elation, as if they had just emerged from a long, dark tunnel into the light of understanding. They shared glances, each recognizing the profound connection we had formed through our collective struggle. We were no longer just strangers thrown together by chance. We were a family bonded by our experiences. As we made our way back through the forest, the sounds of nature enveloped us. The birds chirped in celebration, the wind whispered through the leaves, and the world felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. I looked around at my companions, their expressions full of awe and wonder. Each step we took felt lighter, as if the ground beneath our feet had shed its burden of sorrow. In the distance, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I couldn't help but feel that Clara's spirit was guiding us home, a beacon of hope that reminded us of the power of love and connection. When we finally reached the edge of the forest, I paused, turning back to take one last look at the place that had once been a source of darkness. Now, it felt like a sanctuary, a space where stories lived, where memories intertwined, and where healing began. I felt a renewed sense of purpose swelling within me. "Let's remember this day," I said, my voice steady and firm. "Let's not forget the stories we shared or the lives we touched. We have a responsibility to carry these tales forward, to honor those who came before us, and to ensure that no one is left to suffer alone again." As we stepped out of the shadows of the forest and into the light, I realized that I had finally found my place in the world. No longer just a ranger wandering through the trees. I was now a storyteller, a keeper of memories. The forest had changed me, just as I had hoped to change it, and I understood that the real battle wasn't just against darkness, but for the light that can emerge when we choose to stand together. Months passed, and the forest flourished like never before. The stories of Clara and the lost souls echoed through the trees, transforming the park into a sanctuary of remembrance. I organized guided hikes, sharing the history of those who suffered, ensuring their voices were never silenced again. Visitors came from far and wide, drawn not only by the beauty of the landscape, but by the tales that breathed life into the woods. As I stood beneath the ancient tree, I felt Clara's spirit linger, a gentle reminder that even in darkness, love and connection can illuminate the path forward. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey through the Smoky Mountains. If Clara's story resonated with you, I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Have you ever encountered something inexplicable in nature? Your story could inspire others to confront their fears and seek healing. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more haunting tales from the wild. And if you're brave enough, click on the next story to explore another eerie adventure. Together, let's keep the spirit of those who came before us alive, one tale at a time.